There's a reason this round of 32 clash between Brazil and Japan has people talking more than your average knockout fixture. Part of it is the obvious storyline of an Asian side facing a heavyweight, but the bigger reason is that Japan can actually play. This isn't a side making up the numbers in the bracket. They pass, they move, they create real problems for teams that aren't switched on. So the question everyone's asking is simple: can Japan pull off the upset? Or does class eventually tell against Brazil? What makes this matchup interesting is the contrast in how both teams want to play. Japan is built on structure. Every man knows his job, every rotation has a purpose, and very little is left to chance. Brazil, on the other hand, still plays with that freedom and flair that's baked into their football DNA, even under a more pragmatic coach like Carlo Ancelotti. And if you need a reminder of what Japan is capable of on a good day, go back to their October 2025 friendly against this same Brazil side. Brazil raced into a 2-0 lead, looked completely comfortable, and then Japan tore the game open in the second half to win 3-2. That result is still the freshest memory most fans have of these two teams meeting, and it's proof Japan can hurt anyone when their structure clicks. The danger is overreacting to one result and assuming that's the baseline every single time. Strip away the emotion and look at how Japan has actually performed through this World Cup, and a clear pattern shows up. They're excellent in possession, comfortable building from the back, patient in retaining the ball, and genuinely impressive at winning it back once they lose it. Against the Netherlands of all teams, Japan still managed to hold close to 20% of the ball in the final third, which tells you their structure travels well, even against strong opposition. What's missing is the finish. Time and again, Japan does the hard part, breaking lines, getting bodies into good areas, and then fails to turn that into goals. Even in their strong showing against Sweden, where the underlying numbers were excellent, they still only scored once. Same story every match. Defensively, there are legitimate question marks too, particularly against quicker, more physical, more direct opposition. But there's a flip side. Japan's passing sequences move fast enough that they can genuinely unsettle a team that presses high and aggressively, which is exactly the kind of opponent that can get caught out by quick combinations through the middle. Dig into the data and you start to understand why. A huge chunk of Japan's build-up play happens unopposed, somewhere around 44% of it. And even when teams press them, their progression numbers hold up well between the lines. Long balls aren't really their thing though. Their success rate going over the top is poor, barely scratching 3%, which tells you that when Japan does go long, it's more about hunting second balls than completing a clean pass. Out of possession, they're not a team that presses everywhere the way Colombia might. High press numbers are low, mid press isn't much higher, and instead they lean on a well organized mid block and low block shape, sitting in something close to a 4-4-2 or a 5-3-2 depending on the situation. But here's the wrinkle. Against a more transitional, direct team like Sweden, Japan's forced turnover numbers shot up noticeably, even high up the pitch, compared to how passive they looked against a more patient, controlled side like the Netherlands. Brazil plays with far more freedom and expression than a counter-attacking Sweden, so don't be surprised if Japan actually presses them harder than people expect. One real concern for Japan is their goalkeeper's distribution. Zion Suzuki is reliable with short passes, but almost every long pass he's attempted this tournament has gone to waste, and that's a real opening for Brazil if they press high. On the attacking side, the player Japan can't bench is Ritsu Doan. His crossing, dribbling, and record as a difference maker make him close to untouchable, even if the alternative, Sugawara, offers more defensive solidity on that side. Daichi Kamada and Ao Tanaka are the engine room, the two pivots who constantly offer themselves to keep possession ticking without breaking shape, and if Brazil chokes those two out of the game, Japan loses a huge part of what makes them function. Up top, Oda likes to drop between the lines to link play. Maeda offers a real threat running in behind, and off the bench, Junya Ito, not to be confused with their left-sided center back, also called Ito, has been responsible for most of Japan's crossing volume, even if his completion rate hasn't been great. Now flip to Brazil, and the picture changes. This is a team built on a properly elite spine. Marquinhos and Gabriel Magalhaes anchor the backline. Alisson is one of the best goalkeepers on the planet, and in midfield, Casemiro screens the defense while Bruno Guimarães quietly recycles possession and keeps the structure smooth, with Paqueta adding energy and craft alongside him. This is not a midfield that's easy to break down. What might surprise people is that Brazil actually presses more than Japan. High press numbers around 5% compared to Japan's 2, with mid press noticeably higher too. They keep good height and shape through the middle and final thirds, and they're devastatingly efficient breaking lines centrally, completing 35 of 42 attempted line breaks in their match against Scotland, which says a lot about how sharp their central progression is. They're also happy to go long over the top, usually toward Vinícius Jr. and a quick runner like Ryan, while Cunha likes to drop into pockets to link the attack. But here's the part Japan could actually exploit. Out of possession, Brazil gets surprisingly narrow. Their lateral width shrinks to around 40 meters in a mid-block and tightens even further to roughly 36 meters wide and 24 meters deep in a low block. That's a team squeezing the center on purpose, daring opponents to go wide instead. Given how much Japan likes to whip crosses in from out wide, that's a real avenue if they can get in behind early. In terms of selection, I don't expect Ancelotti to change much from the side that played Scotland. Danilo, Marquinhos, Magalhães, and Santos across the back. Alisson in goal, Casemiro, Bruno Guimarães, and Paquetá running the midfield, with Vinícius, Cunha, and Ryan leading the attack. Neymar should come off the bench for the closing 20 to 30 minutes rather than start, and the only real alternative up front is Luis Enrique in for Ryan, though that feels unlikely given Ryan's current form. Japan's selection is more of a genuine puzzle. If Moriyasu wants to attack, the likely setup is Kamada and Tanaka holding as the double pivot, freeing up Doan and Maeda or Junya Ito higher up the pitch. If he wants more control and security in midfield, expect a three-man unit of Sano, Tanaka, and Kamada pushed forward as the advanced playmaker, with Sugawara and Nakamura as the wingbacks and Junya Ito starting ahead of Maeda. Either way, Suzuki keeps goal, and the backline of Taniguchi, Ito, and Miyasu should stay largely settled. There's also a layer to this fixture that goes beyond 90 minutes of football. Brazil and Japan share a genuinely warm football relationship, and a huge part of that traces back to one man, Zico. When the Brazilian legend moved to play in Japan's J-League, he lifted the league's profile and became a cultural bridge between the two countries, helping send young Brazilian talent and coaches over to develop Japanese academies, before eventually managing Japan's national team and later Kashima Antlers. Back home, interest in the J-League spiked simply because Zico had gone there to play. So this isn't just two random nations crossing paths in a knockout draw. It's two football cultures, wildly different in style, connected by one player's legacy. Whoever wins this one moves on to face the winner of Ivory Coast and Norway, and both sides will fancy going deep from here. But for this specific match, I think the gap between Brazil and Japan, while smaller than it used to be, still exists, mostly because of that finishing question mark hanging over Japan. My prediction is a tight, nervy game that goes to extra time, with Brazil edging it 2-1. Give Japan credit for at least one goal, because on their day, we already know what they're capable of. Drop your own prediction in the comments, and if you're new here, go ahead and hit subscribe so you don't miss the rest of our World Cup coverage. Catch you in the next one.